Hello everyone, and welcome to a video that's going to wrap up the early chapters of the Water Knife and really wrap them into the final exam. And I want to walk you through the final exam a little bit, and I'll mention some small ideas that you might use, even though I can't give you answers, right? But I want to point out the links between the final exam and this document, which you have, in which I put a video together on this as well, and you've probably watched it already. Hopefully you have. So let's look at the exam. Short answer, 75 points each. The whole exam is worth 300 points. And so answer two of the three following. This is identical to the midterm, but the topics are on sustainability, right? So I've got one just on sustainability is social justice. Where does social justice come from? And again, I'm talking about using three criteria. What do I mean by this? Well, I would look through this document, sustainability and the natural, right? All of this has to do with environmental racism and stereotyping and people being on the losing end, right? Communities being on the losing end. So your three criteria, if you're going to look at this, you could choose either El Returnal or a small place. And you would go through here and you've got all these ideas in here. I mean, I've got 1, 2, 3, but even under 3, I've got A, B, and C. So I've got 3 there, right, to some extent with different ideas. And I've got more down here as well. And even some of these for sustainability is social justice. You could look at how social systems are overtaken by more developed nations. And certainly there's some evidence of that in both El Returnal and Small Place. So you could even pull from B here and some of these ideas to answer option 1. You wouldn't want to use here just resource use and societal collapse, because this is the social justice end of sustainability. Remember, we defined sustainability as both linked to resources that are needed, ecological resources needed to sustain human life, but also as a social justice issue. And so this question focusing just on this. So A and B are going to be your best friends here. If you want to go down a little bit farther, you do have human rights and sustainability. Maybe some of this could factor in as well, right? So if you look at education and some of the other things that we looked at, they might have a place in El Returnal or a small place as well. Number 2, about to collapse or not. That kind of points us right here. So your 3 criteria are probably going to be taken from some of these bullet points or these misconceptions. You're going to take maybe just this one right here, problematic cultural attitudes linked to power and maintaining privilege. And you might look for that as one of your criteria that you use to generate a paragraph if you answer this question of about to collapse or not, right? And so that's how you want to do. You got multiple criteria here too, going all the way through. Can culture be sustained in a colonizer's economic and cultural system? And so here, what you're looking for, I changed this one a little bit. Here you could actually use 2 different essays, and you're going to argue whether or not a culture is going to get changed negatively always when it comes in contact with a more dominant culture, usually a Western culture, a developed culture, a culture with a free market. These are some of the things that we talked about in class. So does the culture always lose in the less developed nation? Or does it not change all the time? There's something of cultural sustainability. They're not stereotyped. Again, we could look back at this and we could think, okay, these things either are happening or are not happening whenever a culture comes into contact with a more dominant culture. So this one is in the area of social justice, but I also included economic systems. So you can include just about anything. You could kind of rifle through here and pick out ones for whatever you'd like to analyze. So you could choose from here. We've got the economic stuff, and the question certainly supports using that. You could even talk about resource uses or human rights and, the way that governments and private corporations function together. You could use that as one criteria here because, again, you need 3 criteria, right? So this one's pretty open, and you can pretty much choose anything off of this document, and that would be okay with me. All right, and do note that I said you can use up to 2 essays. You don't have to choose just one. You can choose just one. You could just work from any of these, just one of these. In fact, as I'm looking at this, the one that I forgot was the pollen essay. So I'll write that in there as well. You could use the Pollen essay, but also this poem, the essays, etc., etc. You can even use the Coca-Cola readings, which were real life and not literature, but you could look to answer this question about cultures being undercut by colonizers in some way. All right, so that is that one. And then after that, we're on to our long answer here, the water knife. And so here's what we're thinking on the water knife. So it's the same as the midterms long question in the way it'll be organized. Two different interpretive lenses with 3 criteria each. That probably means 3 and 3 6-body paragraphs, right? In the video you watched before, this kind of walked you through how to organize that. And you saw a nice example from a student. Here's what we're thinking. The water knife can always be read as an argument about our current world, about human rights and social justice and environmental protection and keeping a sustainable world, right? And so if we want to look at the novel as an argument about what is going right or wrong in society, we might think of it like this. And books can always be read as an argument. That's what I'm saying, and I'll let you read through that. But the big question or task that I want you to deal with is this. Using 2 different interpretive strategies, just like on the last exam, identify the major reasons you believe this society in the water knife is failing. And so we could look at any of our strategies to try to pinpoint what is the biggest thing going wrong, or what are the 2 biggest things going wrong. Because this is a sustainability unit, your first interpretive strategy, which is going to have 3 criteria in it again, as they always do, at least in this class, will be based in sustainability. So you're going to look at, I even broke it down into 4 basic ideas. I said one is social justice, social inequality, right? That is this one. Is that what you think is going the most wrong? Is that the cause of most of the problems in the water knife? It's this, that there's a lot of social inequality in there. That would be one. Number 2 could be economic systems that privilege the wealthy and the powerful, right? So that would be B here, and you could draw from here 3 criteria, 3 ideas. Number 3, the overuse of resources and ignoring signs of environmental collapse. We're kind of getting into C here, right? You can see I organized this in a nice parallel fashion. Or is it that water is a human right and it's being ignored in some way? And that's going to get you into all of these interesting questions. Should it be for profit? Who gets to use it, right? Who gets to protect it? Governments. You know, we could look at the water knife and say, did governments do enough to protect people's water rights? Or are they still doing enough to protect people's water rights? You probably know, if you've read the novel, or you'll be reading it soon, that governments aren't really doing much at all to protect at least all people's rights. You know, the federal government doesn't do much. You know, federal politicians are oftentimes inept in the novel. And you know that states aren't trying to provide water to everyone, but rather to certain towns, and they're picking winners and losers. So it's not democracy, is it? So you could choose number 4 here, even though, you know, the sort of the political weaknesses that are creating this world could also be used to answer maybe number 2, right? Economic systems that privilege the wealthy and the powerful, like the government. So there's some overlap here. But those are 4 basic areas that you can work in. So you're going to create the first 3 paragraphs of your essay with 3 ideas taken from one of these 4 areas to make everything nice and tight. These are our 4 basic areas of sustainability that we learned about, right? Even if there's some overlap and they're not clearly definable from each other. But think of those 4 as 4 separate ways of talking about sustainability. For your second one then, so this will be paragraphs 4 through 6, at least your body paragraphs, is a nice way to think of this if you want to organize it the way I've suggested. And here you can either go with another sustainability strategy. So you might say, okay, first I think this world in the water knife is going wrong because people are abusing power. And that's your first 3 paragraphs in here. And then for the next interpretive strategy, you might go back to this and say, maybe it's ignoring signs of environmental collapse, or maybe it's social justice issues. However, for your second interpretive strategy, you don't have to work with sustainability. You can work from an older course concept, and I've listed a few here from Module 1 that might work to produce another interpretation of this. You could use the fall recovery stewardship dominion ideas. So you might say that, okay, the reason this world is collapsing in the water knife is because of social justice and social inequality issues. And after that, it's because of a lack of stewardship of the land, right? Or you could argue for 3 paragraphs that are linked in some way that it's an abuse of power, the wealthy privilege themselves and have short-term, not long-term interests in some way, but then also that there is a lack of stewardship, right? Or whatever you want it to be. Pastoralism may work. Be careful with pastoralism, and I'm sure that it might not be a great answer for this, but I've included it for you. The ecological readings, that they're spending their ecological systems and there's a state of imbalance. Clearly that would work here as well, right? But in the end, 3 criteria for your first strategy that'll be based in sustainability and everything we learned in Module 2. And then you can either stick with sustainability and another set of ideas from here, or you could go into older course material. And again, 3 criteria in the way that I modeled it, right, in the last video. All right, so that's what you need to do. I don't want to say too much about the water knife, but clearly all of these things are there. We see, if we just want to go through our 4 areas, we certainly see we see social inequality. You want to pick out, well, who is socially unequal here, and why and how, right? I went over how to write about this in the last video. So how does the environmental racism happening? Who's losing here? Who's winning, right? The interesting thing in the water knife, the winners sometimes are, there's that funny passage where it's the Chinese government and the Mexican drug cartels are investing in these beautiful sort of eco towers that only the rich can afford, right? And we also know that American politicians are protecting themselves. So there is environmental racism in the city of Phoenix, all these people living on the streets, trying to trade water, afford water, going without water. That is the environmental racism, right? So you can look at that, and you've got to come up with good examples of that. And that can start to support an answer for you, right? So you can see all of these things in the water knife. All right, and you can go through the other ones as well as you wish. I think you get the picture here. So I will let you work it out from there. I hope you enjoy the novel. I hope you have fun in the exam. This can be a good time. It's not just school, right? This is fun stuff to look at. And the reason I did this question is because I think it's a lot of fun to look at this novel and say, well, you know, all of these are going wrong. All of these exist in the novel. But what I'm curious about is what you, at the end of this course, what you see as most important, because this course is about you, not about me, right? So that's that. I'll leave it at that. Good luck with everything. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to email me. I want everyone to do well. And so I will see you soon. There will be one final video that's sort of a course wrap up, very, very short. And that is it. Thank you, everyone.